Well, hello guys, welcome back to John's Workshop. This is episode 11 and I'm going to call this episode Making of the Bench. So after yesterday's excitement of building the Cormac saw, it's now in its sort of, I don't know, it's its final position, but it's in its position where it needs to be for use anyway, certainly for putting the lengths of steel for the bench. So just before we get on with that, later on last night, after I'd sort of packed away the boxes and stuff from the saw, I started having a bit of a tidy up, and you'll probably be able to see that the Clark benches, the Clark toolbox has disappeared, so that's now been emptied, and I've started putting some of the stuff into the new tool cabinet. So I'll just show you some of that, and then we'll get on with the bench. Here we are at the new tool cabinet, and like I say, I put some stuff in there out of the old Clark box last night. It's not looking too bad now, so this is sort of top drawer measurement equipment and bits and pieces, so various different dial indicators, some of them very old. Again, they were my dad's when he was in engineering, so an old John Bull dial indicator there in its original box. Verdict dial indicator and a Mercer dial indicator in there. I did buy a sort of cheap Chinese copy dial indicator. It's okay. It's not the quality of the old stuff, but it does the job. Various different sort of finger clock type indicators. There's a Mercer one there, and I've got another Verdict one. Thread pitch gauges, feeler gauges, and then a whole load of different micrometers, various different sizes, lots of sort of 0 to 1 inch, and then 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and I've got a 1 to 2 in there as well. So various different micrometers. Squares, pens, vernier calipers, that type of thing. So that's a decent drawer of measurement equipment there. In that drawer, sort of all my parallels and punches and knockouts and oil stones and that type of thing. I'm still to arrange all of this properly yet. They're in there just for now, out of harm's way. So that's kind of a sort of update on where the tooling's going. I'm not going into too much detail. I know I've joked a couple of times about doing CAD drawings, and it's always been in jest, but I've actually done a proper CAD drawing, almost, just to help me with the bench. So this is, well, let's get that right way up for the camera. You'll see there, this is a bit of a mess. This is John's Workshop on a budget, so tighter than 2 coats of paint. I've got a trial version of QCAD that I downloaded, which is just a 2D CAD package. It's actually quite usable. It's a very decent piece of software. Unfortunately, when you print it out, it puts this graphic on, and it also puts random lines all over the drawings. So, but I have created. So this is my drawing template and border that I've created, with John's Workshop on it. It's got grid references around the outside. But this is really just for me. So what I've created there is, it's not a full CAD drawing, if you like, but it's 2 sheets, and it just shows me what the wooden bench top's going to be. And also there I've got a cutting list of the lengths of angle iron that I need to cut. So that's why I brought that out in the garage. It's readable. It'll do for what I need it to do. So we'll get on. I guess at some point I may. It's about £30, I think, to buy the license for this software. I do quite like it. It is only 2D though, but for the machinery that I've got at the minute, 3D solid modelling's not really something I need at the moment. At some point in the future, I may get myself a 3D printer, and at that point, I'm going to need some different software. But I might use Google SketchUp or something, one of the free ones. So yeah. Proper CAD drawing, almost. So we'll crack on. I need to tidy up make some space at the back, so I need to move some of these other boxes out of the way and then start measuring up and cutting steel. And when we get to that point, I'll probably do a time lapse. So once I've done the video editing last night, I found out I can slow the time lapse clips down, so it's quite watchable. So I'll bring you back at that point and we'll crack on and start getting some lengths of steel cut for the bench. Right guys, we've had a bit of a shuffle round. Cleared the back end of the shop other than the piece of wood, but I can move around that to measure and stuff what I need, so that's fine. We've got the first piece of angle iron loaded up in the saw, and I'm going to use a piece of round bar, you can probably just see it there in the vise, to help grip that rather than trying to grip on the small sort of thickness of the angle. So that's what I'm going to use there, and then at this end I've managed to look out my support. That's off like a wood chop saw unit that I bought years and years ago, but it's spot on. I can just get underneath the height of the saw with that, so for long lengths of bar that's ideal. So I'll bring you back in a moment. Just one small correction I need to make before we start. Yesterday in yesterday's episode when we did the unboxing and setup of the saw, I knew I was incorrect when I said it. I said I'd had a comment from a guy called Chris from the UK regarding the top part of the saw being Asian import. I've had some comments back this morning on the video I posted, and yeah, I was 100% wrong. Other than the first letter of the first letter of his Christian name, which is a C. His name's Carl actually, so apologies Carl. I'm a very easily confused person at times, and I've had so many responses over the last couple of weeks as well that I am getting slightly mixed up, so apologies for that. Okay, so I'll bring you back in a moment and I'll probably do a bit of a time lapse as we start chopping some of this angle iron for the bench. Well, we've got the lengths cut, guys. Well, lengths for the legs anyway, the 8 legs, they're all cut. I've just got to drill some holes, so I've just lashed up the pillar drill to drill some holes in the legs where I'm going to bolt through into the brickwork for the back legs at least anyway. So I'm just a little clip of that in, and then I'll just keep filming clips as I go with various bits of the build. Just out of interest, there you go, Cormac, I've removed your badly fitted label, so we'll flatten that out at some point. I think it'll flatten out alright, and then we'll clean it up on the back. It's obviously just been siliconed on, so we'll clean it up and we'll put it back on the saw body at some point. Right guys, I've got the legs cut, or the 4 legs for the sort of outside extremities. So you can see there's two there on that wall, two there on that wall. They're fixed onto the wall, or certainly temporarily at least. And I've got one of the cross members cut down there on the floor at full width. I've made one of these benches before in a previous garage out of angle iron, and in that garage I just built it in situ and welded it in situ. But unfortunately in this garage some clowns clad the garage with wood, which makes that almost impossible. So not being a welder, and also not having a flat surface anywhere that doesn't have some kind of runoff on it. Even this garage floor has got a sort of ramp on it. This is going to be difficult, I think, for me, but we'll give it a bash. So I think what's going to happen next is I've already cut the two sort of braces, top and bottom, for the two shelves, if you like, top of the bench and bottom shelf at both sides. So they're cut. So I think next thing we're going to do is we're going to take each of these legs off. I've measured everything up. We're going to weld the top brace and the bottom one on both those sides. Then I'm then going to test fit one of the long lengths on the front, and I might just tack that loosely, and then we'll come back in, offer it up, see whether I need to do any adjustment with the legs. Unfortunately the walls are slightly out of plumb, and I didn't do anything with plumbing when I put the boarding on. I just copied what was already there pretty much using battens, so I didn't do anything to straighten the walls up. So we'll do that. We're going to take those off, weld up the frames each side, then we'll tack one of the long lengths on, bring it all back in, offer it up to the wall each side, make the corrections that I need to make, which will be a big hammer job probably. Take it back out, weld it up a bit more, bring it back in, offer it up again, just to make sure everything's looking, it's not pulling one way or the other. And then I'll cut the other long length for the back, do the same. And then at that point, once we've got it to there, I'll probably bring it back in and fix it in, and then start welding the rest of it in situ. Now thinking about that, I can't do that either, because I'm going to be welding onto the beams that are already, the posts that are already going up and down the wall. So yeah, this is going to be in and out a few times. And like I say, I'm not a welder. I don't really do this. I've done bits and bobs of welding, but I don't really know the right way or the right approach, so I'm just kind of making it up as I go along, and I'm bound to make some mistakes, but I'll film them as well if I do. So I'll keep bringing you back. So next thing, I'll get all these lengths back off the wall, we'll get them laid out. I'm going to do the welding in the garage here. A couple of tips that I do know for welding, and I'm going to be stick welding. One is cleanliness is everything, so I'm going to get the grinder out and just clean everything up where I'm going to weld for a start, and also put some brake cleaner over them, because I've cut those on the saw, those lengths, using a bit of oil, so there's oil residue, so I'm going to get rid of all of that. And then a good friend of mine, an ex-work colleague, a guy called Andy, gave me a tip yesterday about sticking the welding rods in the oven for an hour before I use them, just to make sure it drives any moisture out of the flux coating. So we're going to do that as well. So I'm going to give myself every chance of making a half decent job, but I'm sure it's still going to look like the pigeons have come to town when I finish. But we'll make a bench out of it. I'll bring you back when we're ready to do the next bit of welding. think I'm going to win any prizes in any welding competitions, but then again, I never did. So yeah, it's not pretty, but it's, the word I like to use is functional. So it's not going anywhere. It's pretty well welded. So a bit of a clean up now, and then I'll get the other side done to the same level, and then we can start test fitting and putting the, I need to then start doing the cuts on the, I'm going to use scarf joints, I think they're called, rather than mitre joints. So I'm going to cut out the sections I need to cut. It's just easier to do it that way. So I'm going to cut those, and we'll carry on sticking it all together, and then when we're done, we'll give it a good clean up, and I might paint it, I might not. It's yeah, it's going to be most of it's out of sight under the bench anyway, so I might paint it, but if not, we'll just give the welds a good wire brushing and leave it at that. I'll bring you back. We'll do a bit more time lapse maybe in a bit as I'm starting to build the rest of it together. I've just set up for the next side, guys. I'm going to do this one a bit differently just to make life easy. I'm going to tack it in place and just hope that it doesn't get too hot going through to the woodwork. So it's going to be far easier to do that than it is to try and lay it all out on the floor again and get the measurements right. So I'm just going to give it a quick couple of tacks on the top and bottom rail in where it needs to be in place, and then I'll take it off the wall, lay it down, and weld it up properly, and we'll see if that's not a bit easier than what I did last time. Well, I've got the top one tacked on, and I've not burnt the garage down. So that's a bonus. So that's tacked, and now for all the welders out there, you probably better cover your eyes. That's how I'm doing the bottom one. So we've got a varied mix of plastic cases, drill boxes, bits of steel, but yeah, it'll do the job. It's in the right place, so we'll just tack that, and then we'll get that off the wall. Apologies. There we go, guys. That's the two end sections done. They just need a bit of a wire brush now, which I'll do, and then we'll start looking at the joints for the long pieces that are going to form the top of the bench, if you like. The top, yeah, the back and front of the top we'll do first, and then once I've got those done, I'll then start looking at the bottom shelves that are going to go each side. So we're getting there. There's some good news in all of it. We've managed to weld off an extension lead without knocking the house out or melting the extension lead. So that's a bonus. And the welds seem to be going pretty well. So I think putting the rods in the oven. I mean, I've had the rods for 10 years, and they've been in some damp conditions. You can see on the outside of the flux, you can see almost mildew, so you can see they've been damp. But sticking them in the oven, that was an excellent tip, and even I've managed to get a couple of decent runs out of the 20 odd that I've done so far. So but it's all, it's functional. It's not going anywhere. It's got some decent penetration, so it's well stuck together. Okay, I'll bring you back when we're on with the next bit. Well, guys, I've got one of the long top bits done, and I've got the other two frames bolted back to the wall. I'm going to have to do this in situ, weld it in situ, because I'm going wall to wall, and because there's pillars in the garage, there's just no way that I'm going to be able to get this out, to weld it away from the wall and then put it back in place. It's always going to be up against the wall. So that's tomorrow's task. So we've got the first bit cut, we've got the scarf joints cut. It's sagging a little bit in the middle, but that's to be expected. It's almost a 3 metre span, but there's going to be legs just about where the sockets are underneath, supporting it for the lower shelves, and they'll go in hopefully tomorrow.